My name is Michael Gelfand, and my late father, Irving, was a patient of Dr. Galbut's. My father had heart disease most of his life. As a child, in my childhood, he was always sick. He had his first heart attack when he was 42, and by the time he was 45, he was totally disabled by heart disease and was never able to go back to work, even though his work was not physically demanding. He was a dental lab technician, but intermittent chest pains prevented him from being a reliable worker. So he lived the rest of his life on disability. He eventually had a third heart attack. And then, when he was 79, and I was living in Boston, I got a call from my mother that my father had been rushed to the hospital with his fourth heart attack, and he was in the emergency room in critical condition, and that he might not make it. The only way that he could make it would be with bypass surgery, and that Dr. Galbut's team had been mobilized. Well, I immediately headed from Boston to Miami Beach. By the time I got to Miami Beach, the surgery had been completed. My father was recovering. So I didn't get to meet Dr. Galbut until afterwards, when I could shake his hand and offer my thanks. Well, my father recovered, and he never had chest pains again. He had his whole life almost been walking around with a vial of nitroglycerin in case he had an angina attack. He didn't need that anymore. And from a person who was totally sedentary, because that's pretty much what they told you to do in the 60s if you had a heart attack, don't exercise. And so he didn't. After Dr. Galbut performed the bypass, my father was able to walk distances. Before that, he could walk from the car to the parking lot to the store, and that was about it. But after the operation, we started walking on the boardwalk, and we'd walk a couple blocks. It became a quarter mile. It became a half a mile. He couldn't walk a half a mile when he was 50 or 60. And at this point, he was 79, and he could walk a half a mile again and not be short of breath. He eventually had to stop his walking for totally unrelated reasons. He had a hip problem, and he had severe scoliosis, nothing to do with his heart. He lived another 10 years. He passed away at 89, congestive heart failure, rectal cancer. But my mother and my sister and I all say that Dr. Galbut gave my father 10 years. And we had my father for that additional 10 years, which we attribute to Dr. Galbut and his team, because what they did was nothing short of heroic, given that it was on an emergency basis, without any prior evaluation or having him stop his blood thinners or the usual things that a surgeon would want to do prior to an operation. No, he was brought in an ambulance, and like I said, 10 years. Nobody thought my father would live to be 89, someone who was totally disabled in his 40s. Miraculous.